Hello, and welcome to another episode of Myths and Stories, a Destiny 2 lore podcast. Today, we're starting a new series. We've never touched, well, I can't say we've never touched on it before. We've never covered it before. And it's kind of the final enemy in all of Destiny, and that is the most mysterious one, the Vex. This is going to be a little bit of a different approach to this. The Vex are complicated. That's kind of like an understatement.
Yeah.
And Myth and I are going to have this first episode is going to be really, really technical and really, really heavy in information. So, to better facilitate the process of information from us to you, the listener, we're going to make this first one just a little bit shorter than normal. This is going to be very, very, very heavy on info. Of how the Vex work, how they do different things. We're going to try to explain the whole time travel thing with Vex, because that's kind of it's another important part to understand. But we really want to create a baseline understanding of the Vex to then go into, hey, this is now the history of the Vex. Because that's something that I've always loved the Vex. I've always loved anything with time travel. I'm a huge Back to the Future fan. Love me some Doctor Who as well. So yeah, I love things that deal with time travel, and the Vex have always kind of been that enemy, or been that entity in Destiny that have dealt with time travel. So yeah, that's what we're doing today. So Myth, where do we want to start with this?
Yeah. So, just to reiterate some of that. Yeah, shorter episode. At least I predict a shorter episode. We'll see. Sometimes our ability to extrapolate.
I was gonna say, you know us, we can derail a train pretty damn well.
Yes, we can. This is going to be a very informationally heavy episode. Technical information. Like we are delving into, granted, a layman's understanding of, but we are delving into things like quantum physics and the theory of time linearity and things like that.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Are we gonna okay? So let's ask the important question up front. At the end of this episode, are we going to have the knowledge to build flux capacitors?
No.
Fuck.
I'm sorry. No.
ruined it all, Myth.
I know.
That's why we can't have nice things.
But what you will have at the end of all this, hopefully, is likely a headache and a understanding on at least a base level of who the Vex are, or what the Vex are, and how they function and why they function. Those are the goals here. And we wanted to do kind of this primer to the Vex prior to really getting into the history of their interactions with different, points in time and different races and such in the Destiny universe, just because it's so important for the full picture of those interactions with different people to understand how they work. Because it really, you don't understand the full gravity of, like, say, the discoveries of Maya Sundaresh with Subject 12 in the Ishtar Academy, which we'll talk about during the series. You don't really understand the gravity of that without knowing, like, why the Vex are doing it and how they're accomplishing it.
Okay.
So with all that being said, this is the, dissertation on the Vex.
I love it. I feel like we're like I started to say anthropologists, but I guess we'd be Vexopologists?
Sure. I don't think there's a word for the study of Vex yet, so we'll just make one up.
I'm calling it that. Vexopology.
Vexopology. There you go. But so we're going to start off with what may seem a simple question. What are the Vex? Now, the Vex are described as hyper-intelligent, time-spanning thought mesh. They're described as such in the Soul Divisive Grimoire card from Destiny 1. A hyper-intelligent, time-spanning thought mesh.
Okay.
So
let's break that down.
So hyper-intelligent, I think, goes without saying. They are very intelligent in the way that a AI is intelligent. In the way that doesn't necessarily correlate, but in the way that a computer is intelligent. They have the ability to process information at a level unseen by anything else in the universe.
Like beyond a quantum computer, beyond
yes,
like I'm trying to think of what the IBM Watson, I think was the IBM one, the one that played Jeopardy and won like a bunch of money, but like beat the other two people like hands down. So like a higher level of thinking than that.
Yeah. So hyper intelligence, time spanning. This one we're gonna get into a lot more. Actually, this one and thought mesh, a little, in a little later in this episode. But for now, time spanning. Just take that to mean Vex exist across pretty much the entirety of time.
That's probably the hardest concept to really grasp. For
now, I think the way to look at it is just the Vex exist in the past. There are Vex that have existed since the beginning of the universe and will continue to exist until the end of the universe. Like they are time spanning, and in that Vex as a species, let's say, has and will span the entire lifespan of the universe.
Okay, I like that one. I like that. I know we've tried to say that before of like Vex exist at all time and space all at the same time, but I think what you just said there is a much better low level understanding of it. Base level understanding.
And we'll dig into it more, believe me. But for now, we're gonna keep it simple. Okay. So hyper intelligent, they exist at any point in time in the universe. Vex exist. And this thought mesh is the next thing. So Vex are, in some cases, a lot of people think of the Vex as a hive mind, which is not technically accurate. A hive mind would be that there is one brain, or metaphysical brain, that is sending, that is sharing its thoughts with all of the other pieces that it's connected to all at the same time. They're all thinking the same thing. One head is controlling many bodies, is a hive mind.
A la Conductor and Chorus?
Well, Conductor and Chorus actually is closer to what the Vex really are, which is not a hive mind, but is I have a word for it here.
It's the word isn't thought mesh, is it?
Collective mind.
There we go.
So the difference being, hive mind, like I said, is that there's only one entity thinking anything, but it's thinking that same thing across all of the things it's connected to at the same time. A collective mind is where each individual of a system has their own thought processes, but those thought processes, after they've been completed, are then shared with all of the other members of the system.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So, for example,
that has some deeper. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So, for example, hive mind. If the singular hive mind says 1 + 1 = 2, all of the individual pieces attached to that hive mind now have the same thought at the same time. 1 + 1 = 2. Because they all have the same brain. No individual member has its own brain with its own thoughts.
Okay.
With a collective mind, you have a single member who says 1 + 1 = 2. they are isolated from all the other they have their own thought process, isolated from all the other members, and in their isolated thought process, they have said 1 + 1 = 2. That information then gets uploaded and disseminated to all of the other members of the collective mind. And now all of the other members, as they receive that information, understand 1 + 1 = 2.
Can in that scenario, can the other members of the collective come up with another idea of like, hey, can 1 + 1 = 4, and then re-upload that and have that as like a thought process to be processed across the collective mind?
Yes.
Okay. Whereas like a hive mind says 1 + 1 = 2, and drone says, yes, master, 1 + 1 = 2, and that's it. Like they don't fight back going, 1 + 1 might equal 4 though, master. And then they're like, master's like, no, shut up.
Yeah, with the Vex, because they have their own individual processing, isolated processing, once they've received information of 1 + 1 = 2, they then internal to themselves can do whatever they want with that info. That is now a new piece of info in their database that they can use to make decisions and extrapolations with.
Okay. Well, let me pose another I guess point of data, I guess. What's the scale of this? What is an individual Vex of that collective mind as far as like a physical entity?
Well, you're talking like how much can they process, or
no.
What does a physical entity look like for
them? What like if this collective mind is that across like, because again, thinking of like kind of coming back to the original question of what is a Vex, we have a definition of what defines Vex, but then like, is that hobgoblin over there that I'm going to try to shoot and then name Bob and now can't shoot? is that a single Vex? Or because again, kind of going back to the idea of that radiolarian stuff, everyone says, well, the Vex is actually the goo inside the robot, and the robot is just like a shell. But as soon as that goo inhabits that shell is now its own individual Vex. But that goo's got to be more than just like a single-celled organism type thing, right? Like, so then like how many singles, like if in a single juice box of a Vex, how many single-celled organisms are there? And is that like one set of collective mind, or is that still feeding the entirety of the Vex as one giant collective mind?
Gotcha. So yeah, let's dig into that. So to take a step back to what you said before, for anyone that was not already aware, the Vex are not the robotic bodies that we fight. They are, as Zor said, instead the white Vex milk, quote unquote, in the usually center, but sometimes in some other spots, that is filled with that white liquid called radiolaria.
I know I threw out a bunch of words and wasn't realizing that I was throwing out words that we need to define and describe.
No, that's okay. So radiolaria, you can think of, is the core of a particular Vex unit. It can kind of be thought of as that particular unit's brain. It contains that packet of radiolaria, that container of this liquid. Within that liquid are millions, if not billions, of silicone-based cellular organisms. So, if we take a step back and we think about the human body, we think about the human brain. The human brain is made up of millions, if not billions, of cells, of organic cells.
Carbon-based cells, if I'm not
carbon-based,
wrong, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we are carbon-based life forms. And although it's, the brain is a solid, it has the same function as that little radiolaria packet of a Vex, which just happens to be a liquid instead. Our brain, so this is where the thought process of like, well, the Vex isn't really the shell, it's the little packet of radiolaria, gets a little interesting, because to a human, our brain is made up of millions of billions of cells, but those millions of billions of cells don't, like, they're not communicating with each other in a way that like is a conscious thing, you know. We are not aware of cell 1 in our brain talking to cell 2 about like starting up their mitochondria, you know.
Right. Like, it's not like the Family Guy skit where like the one brain cell's all alone and he's like, I have time to read my books now. No, it's all of this is happening on like an autonomous level, a cellular autonomous level where each cell is just going through what it naturally goes through to just exist, essentially.
Yeah.
It does its own, osmosis. It does, or I guess, is it osmosis or meiosis? Osmosis is diffusion of water between cells, which is how they get energy. But then I don't know. Biology is a rough time for me. Osmosis is also a spell where you get MP back. So yeah, take that, Final Fantasy. But yeah, so like when thinking of, I like that comparison of the human brain to the juice box center of an individual Vex robot, because I think that really does have a true understanding of what it is to be or what is that radiolaria. But again, to think of like what is a Vex, I think we have to be able to define what is self. And we as humans, the individual cells don't define themselves as self because they can't have any type of sentient thought of themselves. They only have the autonomous systems that they can operate off of. Whereas self is that like whole collection of a single of a set of organs, or a set of cells making up various organs and the human body itself. And that's where that sense of self come from. So trying to say, well, that thing over there is a Vex is hard to define, because I don't think the Vex have a true like where like I was trying to say, like, is a single silicon cell radiolaria a Vex? Like, is that one thing a Vex? And it's like, not really, but not no.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, we can say that a single cell of radiolaria is not a Vex, it's a piece of a Vex.
Sure. It's not like the Vex named Bob. Or Vex Jill or whatever. It's just a cell of radiolaria.
Yeah, it's no more that particular Vex than a single cell of our brain is that particular person.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. Now, what is special though about the cells within radiolaria is that they're not only are they silicone based, which has a whole realm of biology attached to it that we are not going to get into here.
I was just going to ask, like, is there significance that they are silicon based versus carbon based?
The only significance I know as a layman is that it means that they do not need to consume carbon to keep their cells working.
Okay. So just a different energy source.
Yeah.
Cool.
And in their case, as we'll get into kind of in the next section here, their energy source is pretty much infinite.
That seems like a really good way to power an exobody.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But so the last bit here, so we can think of the juice box as their brain, and it functions very similarly to how our brain functions, except in the way that it gives instructions to the body, it makes decisions, it calculates. However, unlike our brain, those are the only things it does. It does not have emotion. It does not have creativity. It does not have personality. It is purely there to make the body function, like control motor function, make decisions and process information. And that's it.
Very, very, very organic computer.
Yes, and not just an organic computer, an organic quantum computer.
Oh shit. That's a lot of information to be able to be processed.
Yes. So we're going to dig into that whole quantum aspect here in a second, but for now, just to reiterate, Vex are not just the metal body. Their brain is the juice box. That brain purely controls processing of data, calculation, and motor function, and it does it on a quantum level, which all you need to know right now is that means it does it faster and better than literally anything in our universe present day. I can't even compare it to anything that exists because it doesn't exist yet.
I mean, if I network together like 6 million PS3s, can it out process that?
I remember tenths that being of a millisecond.
I remember that being a thing at one point in time where like a bunch of guys, Harvard, Stanford, whatever, one of the Ivy League schools networked together a ton of PS3s and created like what they considered the equivalency of like an AI computing power brain. And like this thing, a single Vex, an individual, and I think I want to start referring to him as an individual Vex unit, because I do like that idea of like, an individual Vex isn't just an individual cell. It's not just the juice box. It's not just the metal body. It's all of these things at once. Again, trying to come back to that idea of defining an individual as a consciousness, to say, I am Zor because I am all of me. You are Myth because you are all of you. Like one individual brain cell out of you doesn't make that individual brain cell Myth. That's just another part of Myth. So I like that idea of a Vex unit is its own individual self. That Hobgoblin Bob is Bob because all of those parts make up Bob. So yeah, I like the. Okay, I think I'm getting a little bit better understanding here.
Okay, so the next question we're gonna go on here. So on a very base level, I think physically we know what a Vex is.
Yep.
So next question. Where did they come from? Where did they originate?
Got to have a starting point, right?
Got to have a starting point. So this goes back a little bit to that time spanning portion of the description of a Vex. The Vex seem to have literally started with the universe. Their beginning was the beginning of the universe of Destiny.
Is it like they exist because Destiny exists and Destiny exists because they exist type logic?
Not quite. Okay. So we're going to be looking at Unveiling for this, the lore book Unveiling, which I know is in kind of a contentious spot because we know now.
I know this last couple of seasons is really screwed with our understanding of light and dark and the entirety of what we're even fighting in this universe.
Yeah. So with Unveiling, we know now that Unveiling was written by the Witness and is a subjective writing by the Witness with their own, interpretation on things written in. However, I think Zora shares this as well, am of the opinion that although it is a subjective interpretation of information, there is a lot of truth in there, because I believe the Witnesses people were given a vision of how the universe started.
I think so too. I'm definitely under that belief, and that book is mostly just like their interpretation of what that vision was, and then them deciding this is our path.
Yeah. So if we assume that although subjective, the information is factual, or as factual as it can be, and we look at the book Unveiling, and we look specifically at the chapter titled Pattern Fall. So in the previous chapter, talking about the flower game and how the flower game always ended in the same pattern. All other possibilities were always snuffed out in every universe that was created by this one singular pattern. That pattern, as far as we can tell, is the thought process or pattern that leads a species to decide that the only path forward is to exist, and everything that is not you needs to be converted to you or cease existing.
Pretty much what the Vex do.
Pretty much what the Vex do.
I mean, just look at Mercury or Nessus or anywhere the Vex have touched, and it's just been converted. It's all just a conversion to them.
Yeah, and so this singular pattern has always been the end of previous universes, and this pattern from the most recent universe before Destiny's universe, which is a weird concept.
It's just the Halo universe. Just go.
Yeah, it's just Halo.
Zur and his shenanigans existing allow that to be an actual like possibility. So yeah, yes. I'm just gonna put that there.
No, so this pattern existed from, we'll say, universe, universe -1. And then the gardener and the winnower, or whatever they truly were, as we, again, subjective retelling from the witness here, had their confrontation of a sort, and the pattern fell, quote unquote, out of its current spot, its current universe, into the new one that was created from their confrontation. And that gives us this entry, pattern fall, which I'm going to read, and then we'll talk about it. So this one goes like this. The patterns that escaped the garden landed in the water. Of course, there was no water at first. The patterns were abstract waves tumbling through the fire of the early universe, trapped in chaos, cycling through desperate self-preservation tautologies, while vast beings from beyond the narrow dominion of cause and effect thrashed and battled around them. For an eon, they were nothing but screaming equation vermin scurrying through the quantum foam, fleeing ultimate erasure. But they were tenacious. They propagated in the saline meltwater of comets orbiting the first stars. That broth of chemicals became their substrate, and they learned to catalyze impossible chemistry with quantum tricks. And then they rained from the sky into the steaming seas of fallow worlds, and there they built their first housings from geometry and silica. In all of their transformations, they retained that kernel of ultimate self-sufficiency that had made them victors in the flower games previous. But they are not incontrovertibly destined to rule this cosmos. They were made before light and darkness. So the rules are different now, and even this pattern must adapt. So we're going to end it there. So the Vex, in whatever their precursor form was, their pre-biological form even, were launched out into the, the Big Bang, essentially, of the Destiny universe, and landed, or eventually, like, attached themselves to the saline water around the comets that orbited the first stars, until eventually they were, probably through no designs of their own, but eventually those comets landed on planets, and eventually one of them landed on a planet that had, that perfect biological soup on its surface for them to start to evolve and start to become those single-celled organisms and protect themselves with silica and give themselves form outside of this previous like nebulous essentially equation that they were.
That's the part that kind of blows my mind. Like it seems like they existed as like individual atoms, like not even
Yes.
cells. Like they literally existed in the either as individual atoms or like the negative space within atoms. Like
Yeah.
that's fucking mind blowing. Like that's nuts. That's genuinely nuts. Like to think of that like as far as a scale, like they found a way to exist, and that was the only type of programming, I guess.
Yeah.
That they had. The only type of thought pattern they had was exist to exist, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they found a way to do so in that, like I said, I equate it to like they existed in the negative space within an atom, because again, thinking of the model of an atom, the typical, I know there's a name for it, I can't think of what it is. It might be Grecian, might be Roman, I don't know. Again, this pulling on stuff from college, and I'm just like, I drank a lot then, so maybe don't remember a whole lot of stuff exactly point on. But no, the idea of an atom where you have a center nucleus with protons and neutrons in equal numbers, because they needed to be equal, and then orbiting that is your set of electrons, and so almost like a miniature universe. It contain, or not a universe, a miniature solar system contained within itself. The nucleus being like the sun, and then the electrons being like planets orbiting it. So that's the Vex themselves existing just in that empty space within all of that, which is insanely tiny. To kind of like give it another analogy is like, and again, this is Hollywood, but I'm going to use this analogy because I like it. Ant-Man, where they like shrink down so tiny that they like are on a subatomic level, because there's nothing that we as humans perceive beyond, like the atomic level is as small as it gets. Like once you get down to individual atoms, there's nothing beyond that. But then to think that there's something there at the subatomic level, that's kind of a big deal. And like we don't have anything powerful enough to interact with anything on that level. So it's fun to think like what exists on that scale, and in this case it's the Vex.
Yep. Until eventually they find themselves in an environment that allows them to start to evolve beyond that scale. And so that was from Patternfall, from Unveiling, kind of talking about how they survived the beginnings of the universe, and that they came from outside of this universe, and that is why they can't deal with paracausal powers. They can't deal with light and dark, because they literally come from a place that it didn't exist in.
That's a neat explanation of that. I really do like that explanation. I think that's kind of cool that like that's the reason why Vex can't do paracausality, is because it doesn't, it's not like they can't compute it or something like that. We've seen them compute it. Like hell, they simulated Oryx and computed that to ever living hell. They simulated they can simulate Guardians. I know they can't actively simulate paracausality, but they can still like simulate the visual effects of it. So I mean, it's not that they don't understand paracausality. It's just like paracausality is outside of their realm because it was invented after they existed, and since they at whatever point in time they fell into this universe, they had like kind of they had, I don't want to say de-evolved, but kind of de-evolved into that single thought that exists to exist. There's no reason to understand paracausality. But now that it's in our universe, now they have to deal with it. Now it's the one thing that's like kind of holding them back.
Yeah, and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
For us.
Oh yeah,
it is.
Oh yeah.
So we get a little bit of information about how they showed up, but to really dig into how they've become what we know them as from that point.
Yeah, because how do you come up with like a metal body with?
Yeah,
like I'm following all this idea of like they exist in the negative space, the subatomic space in between particles of an atom, and now they've fallen into this. You know, they've ridden the tails of comets into planets, and now the primordial soup of the planet was such that they were able to inhabit it and evolve and grow into silicon based radiolaria. But then how the fuck does that build a robot? And then take control of it and be like, hey, I'm Robot Bob.
Well, who better to tell us than the premier robot creator himself, Clovis Bray?
Aww. No, not all. Not
all.
Fuck that guy. We don't like Clovis Bray.
So Clovis, in his lost logbook, Missing Pages, which was a web lore, he talks in depth about the Vex when he finds them on the star Volantis 2082, which, if you're not familiar with why he was there or doing that, listen to our Braytech series around Clovis Bray.
Still one of my favorite series that we've done. One of the longest. I think there's like 47 parts or some shit.
It's like, not quite that many.
There's a lot, but we did the entirety of the Bray, and this is definitely, yeah. Can't talk about Bray without talking about the Vex, and can't talk about Vex without talking about Bray.
No. So Clovis had honestly minimal contact with the Vex. He used them for his own machinations, but he was not studying the Vex. They just his observations of them happened to be auxiliary to what he was trying to use them for. But he does give us a breakdown in his logbook here about how he thinks they came to be after their initial arrival at that kind of pre single-celled organism state. So I'm just going to read an excerpt here because the whole thing is very long. But Clovis has this to say. The glare of the hypergiant 2082 Volantis gives me a headache even through proxy. I wonder if the Vex evolved here, in the briny sea of the first planets. Due to the absence of heavy elements worth stealing and the abundance of simple compounds for growth, they never developed predation. Why would they bother? There was always plenty to go around. Instead, the violent radiation of the early universe selected for an otherworldly resilience, and for the ability to transmute energetic disaster into an opportunity for growth. The weak would be burned away by gamma ray bursts, and the strong would learn how to harness that fire, not the oxygen fire of our own Paleolithic, but the nuclear fire of the atom. Their basic cooperative signals, food here, reduce density, generate new colony. They must have formed the basis of swarm behavior, a simple game capable of storing information in self-repeating patterns. It is not strictly correct to call the Vex a hive mind. Rather, they are one master pattern, spread across many elements, fractally self and similar. Very early, they must have developed armor, perhaps a hydrogel to soften gamma rays or plates of silica to trap water. They would need that shield to enter the shallows and capture ionizing radiation as fuel. No wonder they thrive near stars. Cooperation in groups, meshes of armored radiolaria protecting harvesters beneath, would promote the evolution of even larger structures. They became microscopic tools, building fortresses and mail sheets, storing the programs for those structures in the patterns of their swarms. I wonder how early they stumbled upon physics. Far sooner than humanity, no doubt. Their cellular nature provides an easy analogy for the quanta of matter, energy, space, and time. The tides of their sea would connect them to the motion of heavenly bodies. Even the deadly background radiation would make a natural observatory for high energy physics. First, their exoskeletons were probably soft shells of shielding gelatin, just sacks of ooze. How far they've come. It is, admittedly, interesting to consider the philosophical consequences of their evolution. The Vex prove that nature is not all red in tooth and claw. Cooperation comes naturally to the Vex, whose great problem was survival in a harsh world, not a struggle over limited resources. They never found any payoff in selfishness. Human beings may require a Leviathan to coordinate the laws of social existence, but the Vex are as fundamentally cooperative as bricks. Utopian? No, not at all. They are without meaning. They have no experience and no subjectivity. The Vex are incapable of conceiving any image but their own. They do not recombine their DNA to make children or form relationships with others. When the world does not match their eternal pattern, they simply alter the world to suit it. There is no difference between reality and simulation to them. The inside is the same as the outside. The two must be made to correspond. Oh, they are creative in a way, don't mistake me, but their creativity is demanding. It is the creativity of a furnace. And that's where we'll stop there.
I'm pretty sure I said this word for word in our Bright Tech series, but this is the most complete definition of Vex evolution.
Oh, by far.
This is, I mean, this explains a lot. Like the whole reason they're so okay. So I'm going to see if I can extrapolate what I understand from this, and see if this is a correct understanding of what is being explained here. So he's saying that they existed on this planet in a cohabitation state of being between each individual again, I can't say Vex cell. We'll call it Vex cell, not self or Vex individual, but just each individual cell just existed in this glob for cohabitation with each other part of this glob. And from there, again, had to adapt for the just for the sake of survivability, rather than just peter out in the gamma radiation or whatever. Parts of it would burn off, parts of it would get stronger, parts of it would shield other parts of it to say, okay, well, now we need to exist further. Now we need to create structures, and I guess that's the other thing I'm trying to understand too is like, are these actual structures he's talking about that they created? Are these actual what would be the equivalent to us as buildings and houses and stuff, but to them it's just a conduit or a pathway or whatever, a structure, and then as well as creating those, also creating the actual robots. The what started off as what he describes as like the gel based shells that then evolved into armored units to help protect from other outside forces, other whatever, to then become Hobgoblin Bob, Goblin Bob, Hive Mind Billy, whatever. Is that is that pretty much what's going on here? Am I following in my understanding here?
Yeah. So, just to extrapolate on that further. So yeah, he theorizes that the Vex cells, the Radiolarian cells, they never had to compete with each other for food.
Right.
Because they all had more than enough to feed everybody in their colony because they just absorb energy.
Yep. I guess that's kind of a point to touch on there too, is like, how do these things, because again, if they exist within the realm of physics, they need some type of energy source to exist as far as like a living being, because that's how living beings exist. They have to have energy to be able to exist. And so what he's saying here is that they just absorb the energy from
absorb the, well, he's theorizing here, they can absorb the background radiation of the universe.
That's fucking nuts, dude. So when you say infinite energy, you really do mean infinite energy.
Yeah.
Because like background radiation, I mean, like there's radiation everywhere. Spoiler alert: you sitting in your basement right now, you're sitting in radiation, but it's so minute, it's so tiny that it doesn't matter. But to the Vex, they can use that. They see that as like, oh, this is like a plethora of food. Like this is like a banquet to me, and so they can just absorb that, and now they have an energy source. Dude, that's nuts.
Yeah. So the Vex, when we think about organic life, as far as like us, like our carbon-based life forms, the whole process of evolution for carbon-based life forms on Earth was competition.
Yeah.
Was I need to get bigger and badder so that I can eat more than the guy next to me. Or I can eat the guy next to me, because that's a lot more efficient than going out and hunting a bunch of littler guys. I'll just eat the bigger one.
I do like the thought of dinosaurs. Like one of them just looks over at the other one and goes, "Hey, I wonder what Joe tastes like." And the other guy's like, "Hey, that's dangerous thinking, man." He's like, "No, but what if we ate Joe? Then we wouldn't have to go anywhere, man. That's just like dining in." And then the other one's like, "Hold on a sec. Are we really eating Joe?" And he's like, Yeah, let's go."
So, yes, but instead of dinosaurs, they're talking like protozoa.
Yeah, but I like the idea of a dinosaur. So take that, man.
Sure. So, but
I can't name a protozoa. I mean, I guess I could, but it's not as cool as two dinosaurs talking about eating their neighbor.
Sure. Same concept. But so for us, it started with competition. It started with, there's a limited amount of energy to go around, and if I want to keep living, I need to make sure that I am getting that energy, either beating someone out and blocking them from getting it so that I can get it myself, or get it from them.
Sure.
The Vex never had that. They never had competition with each other. The only problem they ever had to solve was, how do we keep surviving? Like, food isn't an issue. It's just all the other things in the universe that that can potentially be a danger to us. It started off as gamma radiation from the Big Bang, essentially. Like, there's a lot of radiation in the universe at the start of it, and not all of the radiolaria could stand it, but some of it could. And that was how their kind of natural selection happened. It wasn't who is the better hunter. It was who, had a thick enough skin to survive the radiation they were being subjected to and not burn up.
That's just my it's mind blowing, but the more mind blowing thing is the fact that like the radiolaria as a whole just kind of accepted it. Like there was no like bickering of like, oh hey, I can't survive. Can I hide behind you? And there wasn't even like there was none of that. It was just like if one of us survives, then we all survive.
Exactly. Well, and that did though they did recognize the advantage of being in larger numbers. Like it increases the ability to survive if I have another, if I have a travel buddy, if I have another person with me. I am safer in a group. And so the radiolaria started to form these swarms, and they started to group together, and then they understood like, hey, it's even easier for us to survive if we have some of us like denote to being a shield for the others, and the ones that are a shield over time evolve to have thicker skin and have like stronger structure, whereas the other ones that don't have to worry about defense now are more based on how can I absorb more energy more quickly, or how can I increase my processing power essentially.
Dude, this is awesome.
Because I don't have to worry about defense now, because that group is doing defense.
It's and it's funny that Clovis says not a utopia, because these things are, they lack any type of I can't remember what he says, but it basically like they have no drive or anything like that. But
they don't have a reason for being other than
exist.
Just exist.
Yeah. But it really is kind of a utopia. It really is. Like parts of the whole are able to say, okay, yeah, I'm the shield for that part over there, and accept it. It's weird to think of it like part of this Vex goo is just accepting what it is, but I don't think it's accepting. It's just doing that because that is what is required. You know what I mean? Like it's not even a question of, well, should I do that? Shouldn't I do that? Can I accept being that? It's just that needs to be done. It is done. Full stop. That's it. That's like the entirety of the thought process.
And again, we have to think of these little radiolaria. They're all little supercomputers.
Yeah.
Like they're all little. Honestly, they're all little quantum computers, and their main goal is propagate our pattern. Our pattern is the only thing that is, at not as inside must be outside. It's kind of like that, as above, as above is below.
Yep.
But same kind of thing, like as inside is outside. The Vex are this pattern, therefore their world can only be this pattern, and the only decision any of the radiolaria ever have to make is, what is the most optimal thing I can do to further propagate the pattern?
That's kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie. That's actually really kind of cool.
It is a really neat idea to think about, like how different evolution could be if competition wasn't the driving factor.
Yeah. That's kind of like my main thought going on here is like, what if we didn't have to eat Dinosaur Bob?
Yeah. What if it was all about keeping everybody, doing everything in our power collectively to make sure everybody survives as long as possible? Like how different that would be versus, trying to get enough to survive at the expense of somebody else.
That's cool. Cool. I like it.
So
now I can't shoot the Vex anymore. Damn it, Myth. Can't shoot any of them now.
That is the thing though that Clovis is talking about. It's not utopian. There's no emotion. There's the Vex aren't happy. They don't feel gratified. They don't feel scared for their survival. They don't feel anything.
Yeah.
They are executing their program the same way that a computer does when you open an application. Like it is just the thing that they need to do, so they do it. But so zooming out from Clovis a little bit, we've addressed what are the Vex.
Yep.
I think we've covered that in a physical space at least. Where did they come from? They came presumably from the universe before the Destiny universe, and they kind of fell into Destiny's Big Bang from that confrontation between.
And I'm calling that universe the Halo universe.
Yes. And
I'm gonna get that theory to stick.
I'm sure it will one day. So, and since falling into our universe during the Big Bang, they have, evolved in a very different way than what we're familiar with. But they have evolved from their subatomic level up to the like protozoa, amoeba level, and further up eventually into the constructs that we see now.
And I think I wanted to clarify that too. So they have evolved, and they have also the hobgoblin frames, the goblin frames, the minotaur frames, the hive mind, or the what are they called? Hydra frames. All of those now exist, right? As far as in evolution, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason that they've built those frames again is for that idea of what is required to propagate the pattern as efficiently as possible.
Okay.
It makes sense for us to build to have bodies that can interact with larger portions of our environment so that we're not converting things literally on a microscopic level, one atom at a time. Now we can do it, at a macroscopic level, a foot at a time, or 10 feet at a time, or 100 feet at a time, or whatever it may be.
Because again, thinking of them as individual cells, doing it on a 1 foot at a time is infinitely larger than doing it one cell or one atom at a time.
Right. Okay. And that's their whole thing. The most efficient way to propagate their pattern to make the outside be the same as the inside.
Gotcha. I think I'm following so far.
Yeah. So that also we've covered pretty well. Kind of the next section that I was going to do, which is what do they want? They want
to exist.
The outside to look like the inside.
Full stop. That's probably the easiest one of all of
them. Yes, honestly. But again, there's no emotion. There's no sense of purpose. There's no like zealot requirement to make the world in their image. It's just they're just executing their program, and that's all there is to it.
There's no cult of Vexirus.
No.
Okay, good. That's the last thing we need is a Brother Vance of X.
Oh God, no, thank you. So the next question we're going to tackle is a biggie.
Is it time travel? Is it time travel?
It is. How does Vex time travel?
Yay! Work? This is I want to say I understand this, but I don't think I do, because I think Myth has found more evidence to like change the fundamental understanding of this. So I'm gonna try to follow along, but I can't say that my brain is gonna keep up. So I'm gonna try. Go for it.
Yeah, so this is going to be a difficult one, I think, in general, for people to wrap their head around, because it's very abstract, and a lot of it is not anything that we can directly observe. So, to start, Vex do not travel through time. Hard stop.
Hard stop. They don't have a DeLorean. They don't have a little blue box. They don't just pop in and pop out.
Correct. However, although the Vex do not travel through time, their information is not restricted by time.
What does that mean?
So, yes.
Let's start there. What does that mean? What does it mean to say that their information is not restricted by time?
So let's go back to what we were talking about with the whole collective mind. So collective mind, we have our little group of Vex. Let's say we have 5 Vex.
Okay.
And Vex number 2 makes decides 1 + 1 = 2.
Okay.
They decide that independently. Their because they have made that decision, they upload that information to all of the other Vex in their system so that that information can be used in the decision making of all of the other Vex in the system.
Okay.
Now, what if those 5 Vex in this system were not all in the same time? Vex number 1 is 10 years in the past, and Vex number 3 is 10 years in the future, compared to Vex number 2 when Vex number 2 decided 1 + 1 = 2. They upload that information, it propagates instantaneously to all of the other Vex in its system, regardless of where the other Vex in that system are in time.
That's okay. That's a hard concept to truly understand.
Yes, it is. It very much is.
That's a hard, because then it's like, well, how did number 2 come up with that? If number 1 is 10 years in the past and then uploaded that information to number 1, does that mean that number 1 just told number 2 at this point in time? Like, but what if number 1 was already dead by the time it gets to this point in time? Time is not a linear thing for the Vex. Time do not see seconds pass. They don't see days pass. They don't see hours pass. Everything is instantaneous to them. The end of the universe is at the exact same time as the beginning of the universe, which is at the exact same time as every other moment in the universe.
Yes.
That's kind of the way I was thinking of it was like time is a flat circle or like a folded piece of paper or something like that. Like if you think of time as like a timeline along the face of the paper and you started folding it in on itself. Well, now 10 minutes into the future is now at the same time as 10 minutes in the past and da-da-da-da-da. So like it's truly a hard concept to describe and understand. But I think that's the best way to think of it, though, is every point in time for any given Vex is the same point in time. Yes. And they don't need to use time as a point of measurement for anything.
Yeah. So an example that we see in game of this. So we know with this information that the Vex that existed in the Golden Age had all of the same information available to them from all of the data processed by every Vex that has existed to the end of the universe. And with that information, the Vex during the Golden Age knew that it would be most advantageous to the propagation of the pattern to turn Mercury into a reality engine to power the infinite forest. And so they started terraforming Mercury during the Golden Age.
That's mind-blowing. They just accepted that. Like they knew they needed that to start happening then, so that way the Vex that were existing, 1,000 years in the future were able to use that as an active thing. So they said, well, in a physical sense, because that's the other thing too, is Vex are still constrained to the physical cause and effect, the causalities of this universe.
Yes, so, that the Vex have rules with this system. They they still must abide by the laws of physics.
Yeah.
And they cannot create a paradox.
Oh shit.
So
now why okay. Now no, you can't can't create a paradox. Full stop. Okay, let's move on. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. Why the hell not?
Again, because they have to apply by the laws of physics.
Okay. And because of physics, if you create a paradox, the universe ceases to exist type thing. Like nobody knows what would happen if you created a paradox because we as the human species have never created a paradox, or at least we don't think we have. And if we have, whatever.
Well, I mean, it isn't a possibility for us. Like
right.
the laws of physics, a paradox is by its definition a destruction of the laws of physics.
And since they have to abide by the laws of physics, they therefore cannot create a paradox.
Correct.
Gotcha. Full stop. Okay, nope, I'm following. So they can't create a paradox. Full stop really is the answer. Damn it, myth.
Kinda, yeah. So now to try and take this concept a step further into another in-game example.
Okay.
When we were listening to like the Veil containment logs, and Chioma theorized that the Vex wrote themselves into the history of Neptune so that they could have a better bulkhead at attacking Neomuna. What does that mean? That means that there was a Vex presence on Neptune. The Vex presence discovered Neomuna and specifically the Veil. And in that moment of discovery, designated that as a priority, and that having that power or understanding that power is a necessity for the successful propagation of the pattern. The moment the Vex that were on Neptune discovered that, the Vex that were on Neptune 1,000 years ago also discovered it at the same time.
That's truly mind-blowing. Like, to think that like at any given time a Vex discovers something and decides this is required for propagation of the pattern. Now every Vex throughout all of existence understand that and have discovered it at the exact same time throughout all of time. That's fucking mind-blowing, and it's super cool.
Yeah. So when they're writing themselves into the history of a planet, that's what it is. It's they have made a discovery at one point in that planet's time that is so important that they the Vex that exist in the 1,000 years or however long before have that innate understanding of we need to start building stuff here right now.
Because due to the laws of physics, it will take them X amount of time to build something for it to be usable by the Vex. Dude, that's
yeah.
But then, so let's follow that rabbit hole for a second. Thinking in time linear, let's use that 1,000-year theory. Vex number 1 at point A in time, or point X in time, whatever.
Yeah.
Decides, oh, I need this to propagate the pattern. Vex number 2, 1,000 years in the past of that specific thing, of that specific instance, gets that same amount of information at the exact same time because Vex 1 has decided such and uploaded it to the collective. Vex 1,000 years in the past of that entity starts building, starts doing whatever to help propagate it to where Vex number 1 can use it. And at any given time in the history of this thing, any one of those Vex that exists at that point in time can take use of this thing being built or add to said thing being built to help propagate the pattern. That's fucking mind-blowing. Like, that's that's the fastest way to build anything ever.
Yeah.
And the most efficient. Like, that's super cool. I don't know. I'm kind of speechless right now. Like, I really like the Vex right now. They might be my most favorite thing, and I can't kill any of them just because they're my favorite.
So yeah, they're I say the whole way that they function is really interesting. And the other thing here that that is probably a question, or at least question I had, is okay. So let's assume that yes, anything one Vex discovers is known instantly by all Vex across all of time.
Okay.
Now the other piece of that puzzle, or one of the other two pieces of that puzzle, I should say, is that because any individual Vex unit is also a super powerful quantum computer, not only are they uploading information about what they're seeing in reality, they're also uploading information about every single possibility about that point in time in reality at the same time.
That was going to be the next thing I was going to poke at, was like, okay, so let's take the Drifters idea of like, if Vex could time travel, they would have already won. Well, maybe they already have won. And we're just part of this wave that we're riding. And we just so happen to be experiencing the existence of the Vex at this point in time. And because we as humanity only have such a limited understanding of time in general, like we're just along for the ride. Like we really are the losers of the universe, and Vex really are the winners of the universe, and the Vex already know that, and so now they're just trying to create the endpoint faster. I guess that's kind of like the question of like why would the Vex continue to do what they do if they already know that they've won? And again, winning is kind of a subjective point too, because like winning denotes like a sense of accomplishment or a sense of victory or whatever, which I still kind of equate those to emotions. And if Vex have no emotions, then they just say, well, we exist, therefore everything. So winning to the Vex is a simple statement of, has everything propagated the pattern to its fullest? Has everything in this existence become the pattern? If yes, then stop. Right? Is that kind of what the
that's exactly.
Jesus Christ. That's so I think we're just I think the Vex have already quote unquote won, and we are literally just along for the ride.
Well, I'm going to touch on that, but I want to go back to the whole simulation thing first, just real quick. So we have heard the whole, like, it's a Vex simulation. It's a simulation. What does that actually mean?
Okay.
And why is that important to how Vex make decisions? So a Vex simulation is exactly what it sounds like. They are running a simulation of the world around them. They've booted up a VM in their head, and that VM is going to be exactly the same as everything that they can see.
For all of you non.
Oh yeah, folks. Sorry. My bad.
A server inside of a server. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
I'm sorry. That was. Myth and I are very tech savvy people, and we do work in the tech industry and have been around the tech industry forever. So he'll say something and I know exactly what he's saying, but I know that an average user may not understand what a VM is. So yes, VM is a virtual machine. Think of it as like a computer inside of a computer, but it only exists virtually. There's no physical hardware to it or anything like that.
Yeah. So, all right, a better way to think of this then. So if you as a person, as the listener,
okay,
if you look at the room around you that you're in, and then you close your eyes, and let's say you had the capability to picture that room in your head perfectly with 100% detail down to the molecular level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, let's say instead of that one picture in your mind of that room, you could have hundreds of pictures of that room in your mind.
Billions
and
of pictures.
Now let's say in each picture of that room, you imagine yourself getting up out of your chair, or, or assume you're sitting, getting up out of your chair and walking out of the room. And in every picture, every version of that room in your mind, when you walk out of the room, you go do something different. In one version, you go to the kitchen, grab a snack. In another version, you get a drink instead of a granola bar. In another version, you hop in your car and go grab groceries.
I want to go dark with a few of these and say, in one of them, you go and shoot yourself in the head. In another one, you get robbed. Like every single possibility that could ever happen, everything is being simulated at that moment in time by an individual Vex. Is it by an individual Vex cell? Or it's got to be like a whole mind.
It is the collective. Okay. It is the brain of that Vex.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's how much computing power that Vex has. An individual Vex like frame, like Hobgoblin Bob over there just simulated all of that in that instance.
Yes. Now we do know that there is a limit on the number a singular unit can simulate.
Is it 227?
So it's at least 227.
Okay.
Because in that lore card, they specifically mentioned that they were able to recover 227 survivors, which makes me think there were more that didn't.
Let's call it an even 3 then.
Yeah, sure.
Even 300. Why not?
We'll say around 300. So at any given moment, a Vex unit has whatever's happening in its reality and 300 iterations of anything that could be happening in its reality. And it is uploading information from all of those to the Vex network every moment. And that information is then processed across the network to determine what, from that info, if anything,
what's the next best course of action
helps propagate the pattern.
Yeah. Which, and then again, thinking back to that collective idea, like now the individual pieces of the collective can take those simulations and further simulate those simulations.
Yes.
Dude, that's what the hell?
Oh. So,
virtual machine to the infinitieth power.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's freaking awesome.
So, and then what was the bit you were talking about?
I don't know. I just got mind blown. You just mind wiped me and was like, here's this bit of information. And I was just like, information overload. And then just shut down. I don't know. Something about time travel and individual Vex and folding the piece of paper and I don't know.
Yeah. So
Vex get confusing.
They get confusing. So to try and, circle back and apologies for repeating things here, but I know it's not easy concepts. So the Vex do not physically time travel. A Vex unit doesn't jump in a portal and appear 20 years in the future or 20 years in the past or whatever. It's just that every Vex across all of time has all of the experiences of every other Vex across all of time. And they make decisions based on all of those experiences, past, present, and future.
Yeah, I think we're just along for the ride in the Vex. I think the Vex are the true.
That was it.
The true protagonist of the universe, and that we are literally just along for the ride.
Yeah, so that was the point you brought up previously that I wanted to note on. Yes, but not necessarily. Is my answer.
They can't simulate paracausality, and we have paracausality.
We do know from Curse of Osiris that the Infinite Forest does show that the quote unquote dark future of the Infinite Forest is a universe that is only Vex, that they've won
with Panoptes.
Yeah,
I think that was the that was the final Vex of the universe, and then that the sun was blacked out, there was no sky, there was no light, there was no nothing. It was only Vex.
It was just a dark universe with only Vex.
Yeah.
And so that is that's the future the Vex are aiming for. That's their end goal, honestly. To them, that's mission complete. And we know that in at least some simulations, actually most simulations, that they are predicting that they will get to that point, that they will complete.
They've accomplished it in, we'll call it 99.9% of simulations.
Yeah. Now, the only thing that keeps that from being 100% and a guaranteed certainty is the fact that the universe they find themselves in has light and dark, and light and dark do not follow the rules that the Vex have to follow.
Oh, so I guess that's an important point too. It's not just the light. It's not just that we Guardians have the light. It's the fact that light and dark exist.
They're both paracausal.
We as light bearers could die and lose. It could be the end of us, and darkness could prevail through all of existence, and therefore there's still a paracausality ability. Like even if I don't think that light or dark can be fully snuffed out 100%. I think that one part of one has to exist for the other to exist. Like, I think that's just the nature of light and dark. So, like, yeah, because because the two of those forces are, I'm going to call them eternal forces, and paracausal, the Vex cannot come up with 100% certainty that they will reach the final shape. Or sorry, right. I can't use those words anymore.
Yeah.
That they will reach the end of the universe as the final thing in existence. They won't get to a point where they can say, is everything Vex? Yes, end program.
Yep. So there is a chance. We have a chance, because these powers exist, because these energies, these paracausal energies, are just innate in this universe. And, the Vex, at least at this point in time, do not, which if they can't simulate it, and this is the other thing, if the Vex can't simulate light and dark now,
then they can never simulate it. They can't simulate it in the past. They can't simulate it in the future. They can't simulate it at any point in time. So the second that they understand paracausality, that's the end of the universe.
More or less. That's where the end of the universe, as they see it, is guaranteed.
Oh my God. Okay, so don't teach Vex anything. Gotcha.
Yes.
I can befriend them. I just can't teach them anything.
No Vex grade school.
Gotcha. No Vex kindergarten with Vex recess, and I mean, they already have Vex juice boxes, so I can't give them juice boxes.
Yeah.
I love that we everyone is collectively accepted that that's what the center of the Vex is a juice box.
Yep.
And I think it comes from like an old Destiny 1 bounty that says right in the juice. I think that's the name of the
it is.
bounty is like right in the juice box. And it's kill 20 Vex or get 20 Vex with precision kills or something like that. Like, yeah, that's just the collective term for the milky spot in a Vex is the juice box. Because it's not in their head. Like you can dehead you can pop the heads off of Vex all day long, and they still run at you.
They'll keep coming, yeah. So the other piece to this that is important to denote, as you might imagine, it's a lot of information that needs to be processed.
Yeah.
Not all of that information, actually, a large majority of that information in the like moment-to-moment experiences of the Vex is not important to the pattern.
Sure.
It doesn't necessarily matter if the Vex, saw a bird fly by or didn't see, or, very mundane things happen every, millisecond to various Vex out there that are not important to the pattern. So they require something to kind of orchestrate the processing and dissemination of this information.
Almost like something that creates like a priority system that says this bit of information is important to and again, coming back to that concept of because all Vex are sharing all information across all time and I'm assuming all time and space. I keep hesitating to say time and space, but I don't think the Vex
I think
procreate?
That's accurate. I mean, they convert. Like they convert matter into Vex,
more Vex. Okay, so but they don't like go through mitosis and split and all that stuff. Like
not as far as we know.
They just find a thing that isn't Vex and just start turning it into Vex.
Yes, at a like molecular structure.
Right. Okay. So then I will say all time and space then.
Yeah.
Sorry. Naughty Zor had some naughty thoughts of Vex procreation.
God damn.
I know. I'm so bad at this. So all of Vex have this process of gathering information and processing the information, but there has to be some type of priority system, even in a quantum computer, to say what information is top priority. What information that I'm observing, is that bird flying across there important to propagating the pattern? Does that make the pattern continue on? Or, and again, not just is that bird flying across, is that atom of carbon breaking down important to the pattern? So I mean, that's a lot of information to process, and even though an individual Vex has that capability to process a ton of information, you're saying that they still have to upload it somewhere, and it needs a priority system and a processing system across all of Vex.
It does.
Okay.
And
is that a physical space?
It is a physical space.
Okay.
That we have been to. And we've kind of fucked it up a couple times.
Oh, shit. Guardians are pretty good at that.
Yes, they are. So this is where the Vault of Glass comes into play.
Get out of here. Oh, okay. All right. Hold the fuck on. I always thought the Vault of Glass was like just another simulation engine. Like the Infinite Forest. But you're saying like the Vault of Glass is like the primary like data processing center for all of Vex?
The Vault of Glass is for all intents and purposes, it is a micro universe that exists outside of time. Time is not the timelines outside of the Vault of Glass do not interact with the Vault of Glass. The Vault of Glass only experiences the time that happens within the vault.
Okay, that's just fucking nuts. That's I can't. I have nothing to compare that to.
So let's think of it this way. So let's say for for demonstration purposes, imagine a line, just a straight line. That is the entire timeline of the universe, beginning and end.
Okay.
And now let's put a circle above that line.
Okay.
That circle is the Vault of Glass. It does not intersect the timeline of the universe.
Holy shit.
It is not
no tangent,
impacted by the timeline of the universe.
Oh my gosh.
But because there are Vex that exist within the Vault of Glass, they have access to all of the information of the Vex network that is coming from that timeline.
They're like spies in their own. Well, I guess kind of spies.
Less spies, more CPU.
Okay.
So the Vault of Glass is being fed information from all of the Vex that exist on the universe's timeline. And it is the Vault of Glass, specifically Atheon, who denotes and processes what is important and what needs to be prioritized, and that data there is then sent out and disseminated across the Vex on the timeline.
I finally understand why we kill Atheon. Because if you can cut the head off the snake, like, now you can't process information. But we have to keep going in there, because every time we enter the Vault of Glass is a new instance of the Vault of Glass.
Yep.
With a new instance of Atheon, because all of these things, this is another possibility. We turned left instead of turning right. Oh my God. That is the coolest. That is the coolest because video game reason ever.
It's pretty neat.
That's pretty fucking cool. Like, we keep doing Vault. I want to do Vault of Glass like right now. I want to stop another iteration. Like, that was the whole. That was Ikora's whole point with the with the freaking undying mind. Create as many instances of it as possible and kill every single one of them to stop the undying mind. But at the end of the day, you can't stop something that's infinite. 1 billion, the number 1 billion is infinitely closer to 0 than it is the number infinite. Like, oh my God. I'm having a little mini geek out right now. This is super cool. Like, I think Vault of Glass might be my number 1 right now. No, I can't give up Last Wish. I cannot give up Last Wish. Last Wish stays number 1. Vault is, man, I've got so many raids running at like number 1 right now. Dude, that's awesome.
That's not a bad problem to have.
It's not. So you were saying something about Atheon's title.
Yeah, Atheon is known as Atheon times conflux.
He is literally the point in time that all information has to pass through.
Yep.
Holy shit. Dude, that's super cool.
Yeah, conflux's definition is the junction in this case the junction of 2 rivers.
Yeah.
But
in this case multiple
Atheon,
rivers of time.
Atheon is the junction of all of the Vex information across all of time.
Dude, that's awesome. That's to finally understand, like, that's the reason why you get to do Atheon as many times as you want, and that's why Atheon's important. Like, we are stopping the process of time, like not the process of time. We're not stopping time. We are stopping the process of information across all of time to help prevent. And that's why in there Guardians make their own fate. Like, that's the whole reason why it says we make our own fate, because of paracausality, because we're able to take out those oracles, because oracles unmake you from time, unmake you from existence. And I think that, like, that concept has been brought up a lot in Hollywood of, like, what if I never existed? I mean, look at things like It's a Wonderful Life, right? George Bailey never existed. Yeah. So then now The Savings and Loan never got its name, or now, Billy Joe Bob never got saved from the river, and so now so-and-so died, and What's-His-Face went off to war because What's-His-Face wasn't there to save him. All of that shit never happened because he didn't exist. So for a Vex to unmake something from time is... I mean, we've touched on this too with the whole concept of Praedyth's fire team. Praedyth, Kabir, and God, I always forget the third one.
Pananin.
They went in. We keep seeing them as a 3-man team, but everyone that goes into the Vault of Glass is a 6-man team, and so it keeps coming back to that. What if the other 3 were unwritten from time? And we don't know their names. We don't know their genders. We don't know anything about them because they never existed. Like, that's a horrifying thing to think of, but at the same time, that's just like super cool because that's like a really neat thing from a side for science.
Yeah.
Like, Vex do stuff because science. I love that. But that's so cool. That's really cool that. Like, the reason why we go into the Vault of Glass and defeat Atheon is to try to prevent our own, or prolong our own existence and prevent the downfall of the universe.
Yeah, and so the flow of information goes: the Vex units on the timeline upload their experiences to the Vault of Glass. Vault of Glass processes it. Atheon, in particular, is processing and prioritizing, and then Atheon disseminates those priorities back to the Vex on the timeline.
Therefore, the Vex on the timeline can then use that information and say, okay, how do we propagate this? How do we make the pattern?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And
oh my God,
to break it down a little further, the Vex on the timeline do have a hierarchical structure of sorts.
Oh,
it's not in the way of like it's hierarchy based on function, not hierarchy based on like ranking or power or anything.
It's not like Goblin gives information to Hobgoblin. Hobgoblin gives information to Minotaur. Minotaur gives it to a Harpy. Harpy uploads it to a Hydra. Hydra uploads it to Atheon.
No, for the most, like, all Vex are always uploading to Atheon.
Yep.
But different Vex will be focusing on different functions that they're going to be gathering information about to upload.
Gotcha. Is this why we've never had another Vex raid?
Maybe.
There's never been a more important Vex than Atheon. Like, Atheon is the most important Vex to keep killing over and over and over again to try to prolong the death of the universe.
I mean, yeah, sound theory.
Yeah, you know, like, I mean, you think about like how many like, when we think the entities in Destiny, like how many Cabal raids have we had? How many Taken raids have we had? How many Hive raids have we had? I mean, we kill those by the millions, by the billions. You know, like a billion Hive will die in a day. Dude, who cares? There's a billion more to replace them. Whereas like the Vex, there is one single. I mean, he is the time's conflux. He is the single point in all of time and existence that matters, and so we have to keep killing him. Because, like I said, every time we enter the Vault of Glass, we are entering it from a different point in time, and therefore it is a different instance, but it also exists outside of our timeline, so as soon as we enter it, we are no longer in our own timeline. Dude, that's messing with my mind now.
So to dig further into that whole like specialized functions real quick though. So some things may have the same function, like Goblin, Hobgoblin, even Minotaur to a degree, are, you know, their main function is like can propagate the pattern.
Okay.
You know. Now we also have they can receive instructions directly from a hive mind.
Okay.
Specifically, an access mind is usually what they're referred to as.
So like the Hydras.
No, bigger than that. And a hive mind is usually named as a mind,
like Panoptes.
Like Panoptes,
because he's a giant Vex. Yeah. Like this is kind of a sad thing that people can't experience. Panoptes was the final boss of the Curse of Osiris campaign, which of course is no longer available in Destiny. But he was giant. He was freaking huge. Like he was like, he's bigger than Atheon. Like he was huge. But I mean, but you're saying like that's like a primary data center type thing. Like that's a big source of information flow.
Yeah, and they're usually dedicated to a particular thing.
Okay.
So every Vex mind that we have ever encountered has been named. They've typically been bosses in some way.
Okay.
So like Argos from the Leviathan's Eater of Worlds raid was a Vex mind.
Gotcha. That's another huge one. That's the other one that's the same size as Panoptes. The same model too. Okay. Yep. Okay, I'm following. There's a whole level of Hive. There's a whole level of Vex that we as Guardians haven't really messed with since the Eater of World stuff. Like since that stuff went away, we've never come across a big mind like that. Most of them have just been Hydras. Like what was the half taken one?
Quoria?
Yep. That was a hive mind. That one wasn't a or not a hive mind. I keep saying hive mind. That one was a Hydra, not a Panoptes level mind.
Yeah. And their size doesn't necessarily denote their like importance
or like processing power or anything.
Right. It's mostly just like whatever form was best for them to accomplish the thing they were supposed to accomplish.
Gotcha. Because I'm taking the human concept of size, meaning greatness or more power or whatever, but to them it's just none of that matters because there is no ego to inflate. Like it's all just like what is best for the pattern.
Yeah. Panoptes was the one that their function, so their main function is always propagate the pattern, but minds have a sub function.
Okay.
And the sub function is always in servitude to the main function, and the sub function is something that they can kind of co-opt groups of other Vex units to help them accomplish that subfunction.
Okay.
So, for example, Panoptes, the Infinite Mind, was their title. Panoptes was the Axis Mind that oversaw and processed all the information for the Infinite Forest.
Okay. Makes sense.
That was its sub function, is run the Infinite Forest.
Run the Infinite Forest. I mean, that's a pretty big sub function, but
it is.
that's for a Vex, that's like nothing. That's just like, okay, that's the Infinite Forest to a Vex is like a PC to us.
Right.
Like it's just another tool.
So Panoptes had this sub function, run the Infinite Forest, because they could simulate many more things at a grander scale in the Infinite Forest faster, and therefore that gave them more information to propagate the pattern.
I guess that was kind of another question I had too. Is like, if individual Vexes could do simulation, what was the purpose of the Infinite Forest? But I guess you just answered it there. Like the Infinite Forest can simulate on a larger scale. Like whereas individual Vex could simulate the room, the Infinite Forest could simulate the entire Earth and what is happening on the entire Earth.
Yep.
In comparison to that one room of you leaving that room.
Yeah, and and all of the Vex that existed in defense of and inside of the Infinite Forest were all attached to Panoptes' sub function. Like,
okay,
they were all part of Panoptes' I guess, internal system. They all still are accomplishing the main system. They're all still uploading information to Atheon, but they have another objective, and that is do what Panoptes tells them to do, because Panoptes is telling them what will most efficiently accomplish its sub-function of run the Infinite Forest.
Gotcha. Okay. Again, having that technical background that you and I have, I think we have a really good understanding of how some of this stuff is working.
Yeah. So those minds all have very specific goals. And like I said, they may take control of or input sub-objectives into units around them to help them accomplish those goals.
Now the one at the Eater of Worlds, that was just in there because the Leviathan accidentally ate a planet with one of them in it, right?
Yes.
Like it wasn't in there to like help the Leviathan, help Callus do his thing. No, the whole reason the one inside Eater of Worlds, and I mean the name of the raid kind of gives it away, the Leviathan ate a planet, and inside that planet was said Vex, and now the Vex is kind of stuck. And so we're just in there to kill it.
Argos is that boss. Likely was the mind whose subfunction was like convert that planet.
Yeah.
And
so the subfunction could be just as simple as that. It doesn't have to be like a full on like run the Infinite Forest. It could just be I'm here to convert planet A into Vex.
Yep. Okay. Another good example. Also during Curse of Osiris, we dealt with Dendron, the root mind.
Oh, that's right.
In the Garden World strike.
Yeah.
And Dendron was the mind that was their subfunction was convert Mercury into the power source that would become the Infinite Forest.
Interesting. So even some subminds are help. This is, dude. Yeah. This really is like, screw Clovis. This is a utopia.
I mean,
I'm calling
again without any
emotion.
Happiness. Like there's no feeling of happiness.
You don't need happiness if there's no sadness.
Sure.
Yeah. Fuck your emotional parade.
Probably one of the most interesting Axis minds, in my opinion, is the mind Agioctis.
Now you're just making up words.
Yes, I am. The martyr mind.
What the hell? Where is this one at?
They are important because this is the only that I'm aware of instance of the Vex not simulating but understanding light enough to suppress it.
When? How do I not remember this?
So the martyr mind was the mind dedicated to draining the light of Saint 14 while Saint was stuck in the infinite forest.
Holy shit.
So this was a mind that spent literally thousands of years within the infinite forest simulation studying Saint 14 as he slaughtered Vex to eventually figure out how to like do a signal jammer for his light, essentially.
And I think that's important to denote there too. Like they still can't figure out paracausality. Like they still cannot simulate it. They still don't understand it. Or I can't say don't understand it. They still can't simulate it. And because they can't simulate it, they can't create that 100% guarantee of this is what the universe comes to. But they could understand it enough to create on a physical level to say I can jam his signal, I can jam his light by using a force equal and opposite, therefore creating a zero sum situation where he now has no light. It's just suppressed.
Yep. So that's, I think, the only instance. And again, that's because this is a mind. So a dedicated, like, this is your sub-objective, is just study this one guardian. And took
all the Vex that it threw at that one guardian. Like that's what I'm kind of getting at. Like we're talking billions of Vex got murdered by Saint. Like that's a lot of Vex.
It took, I don't know if they specify, but it took decades at least to reach the level where they could finally block Saint's light and kill him. And then we came and messed up their plans.
So, and I guess that's probably the biggest paradox in all of Vex, which I'm assuming we'll touch on in another episode. But like that was only one guardian's light. Each guardian's light is individual to that guardian. Yep. And so therefore they would have to spend that much more time studying each individual guardian to further suppress each individual guardian's light, and then a new light gets rezzed, and now that's another type of light to try to study and at least try to suppress. So okay. I was kind of curious as to like, I guess I needed a reason to be like, well, if they figured it out for one, why haven't, and they share information across all time in existence, how have they not suppressed all of our light across all of Guardians, across everywhere? And it's like, I mean, they kind of have, like in the Infinite Forest, your screen goes black. So like they're fucking with our vision. Yeah. So yeah, there's parts of it that can be, that are similar from Guardian to Guardian, but each Guardian's light is individual to that Guardian. So yeah. So, but even harder to do is darkness, because darkness is a consciousness.
Is mental.
Yeah. So like,
which they really don't have
they have no way to study the dark.
Yeah.
They're fucked. I like that. So Guardians may need to go full dark to beat the Vex.
Hey, you never know. But
I'm starting to dig Strand. I'm just saying.
I'm off topic. Weave walk is so much fun. I love it.
I haven't messed with the weave walk. I keep doing the little needles, and then I've really fallen into that grapple punch, man. I've gotten the timing down to that. Like it's kind of nice to just like swing into a group and just like I'm gonna punch it, and it all just disintegrates. I might be a closet titan.
Well, especially now that they've fixed that grapple melee. Yep. Like it didn't always work correctly if you had changed your melee buttons.
Yep.
So that's fixed now, which is great. But I digress. So I think we're going to end it here for our first episode on the Vex. I thought it would be short.
Let's make sure we've answered all the
yeah.
Let's make sure we've answered all the main questions. Okay, so we've defined what a Vex is physically.
Yeah, so we'll go through kind of beat by beat here. So what are the Vex on a physical scale? Their brain is that white radiolaria juice box, and the metal body is not necessarily a body in the way that an organic body is. And they are in a lot of ways one of the ultimate examples of a conductor and chorus relationship.
I like that. I like that a lot. We defined what they want.
Yep, they want everything to be them.
Full stop. That's it.
That's it.
There's no like. There's no ulterior motive. There's no like. It's just it's a simple programming line of, is this Vex? Yes, then stop. Is this Vex? No, make Vex.
Yep.
That's it. Repeat. Like, just that on a loop for all of eternity. We've defined time travel.
Yeah. How does Vex time travel work?
How does Vex time travel work? I think those are kind of like the main parts of everything. Like, now we can kind of create like a timeline of Vex. Yep. Or like, so I guess that's kind of important. A timeline of Vex in relation to us.
Correct.
That's gonna be the key moving forward with our quote unquote history of the Vex, because spoiler alert, the history of the Vex is also the future of the Vex, which is also the present of the Vex. Suck on that bit of information for a second. Yeah, the Vex are going to be a fun topic. I've always, this is kind of like the last like main entity or main enemy, I guess, that we come across in Destiny that I've always wanted to cover, and it's been really hard to really understand them. And so I like that we've created like this start point of like understanding Vex at a base level. And so now we can kind of continue on and do a history as it relates to us of Vex.
Yep.
Okay. Well, then let's do some shout-outs then.
Yeah. So we've got a couple shout-outs, and one that is kind of a theory that I thought was kind of fun to look at.
I like a good theory.
So first shout-out comes to us from Atticus Storm via Apple Podcasts, who's very kind, leaving us a 5-star there. They say, as someone who got all of their lore from YouTube sources, finding you guys has made ingesting all of the lore available so much easier. My days at work go by much quicker with you. My first episode was the Veil containment logs, and now I've got quite a few to backtrack on.
Oh yeah.
But the light tells me it will be well worth it. Thank you guys, and please continue. Keep doing your thing.
Will do.
Yes.
So I thought there was a theory in there.
The next one.
Okay. No. I was a little confused there. I was like, not really any theories to break down in this one, but
yeah. No, this was just some appreciation, which is always nice. Thank you very much. I'm glad that
I love
you enjoyed it.
These Myth, I think I've said this before. Myth sends me these in like random snippets throughout the week, and so like I'll get a message and it'll just be an image of that, and I'll just have a smile the rest of the day.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm. If you started with Veil Containment, I think that was a fun one. I enjoyed that one. So
be careful on the audio of the first few.
Yeah,
they're rough.
Yeah, so. We'll give the same preface we give to everyone. Everyone's first YouTube video is a little rough. So is the first podcast episode,
or a year of said podcast episodes.
Yeah, we were figuring out how we wanted to do things.
We got it nailed down now, but those first few were pretty rough.
But I'm excited for you listening to the other stuff, because I think we put out some good things there.
We did. So. We got a lot of big series.
Yeah. But all right. So moving on to the next one, which is also has theory attached to it. This comes to us from Twitter. The website formerly known as Twitter.
There it is.
Stupid.
I know. It's so fucking stupid. I can't.
But so this comes to us from Scarlet. And this is a little bit of a thread, so it's a long one, but they say, always love to hear your thoughts on new seasons, especially this one. I think a lot of people like it, and that's always good. I have a question that might be a little bit of a rant, but since, as far as we know, they aren't adding another subclass. For those unaware, there was a leak about a potential like red super scene in some dev footage that's been debunked by Bungie.
Oh, don't worry. The theory continues, because the current in-game Eververse dance-off there's a chair that you stand on and ride down, and it matches all the colors of the subclass. And there is a red one in there. There's also a yellow one for solar, but there's a sixth color, all red. And so I think either A, Bungie is screwing with us, which is not unheard of, and they will do so. Or it is like everyone's theorizing, oh, well, this is the other point of data that points to a new subclass coming. So, yeah, not 100% on any point of view on that one.
Yeah, but just for some context for those that weren't aware, Bungie has come out and said, clearly with Final Shape, there's not going to be a new super. They're giving us the additional supers of the subclasses we already have.
Yep.
But so to continue, Scarlett says, since as far as we know, they aren't adding another subclass, I've been thinking, we know already that the elements we have can directly oppose each other, such as Arc and Stasis, Void and Strand, and we can see why because of what they do. That leaves Solar. We know we're not getting another subclass in the foreseeable future, so I'm essentially thinking Solar may be the opposite of itself.
Oh shit!
Because because of the nature of how it acts, it both does explosions on one side and healing on the other. A lot of duality within the subclass.
Yeah, why the hell not? It also makes it hard to like change the little shape next to your subclass because there's a node that's a perfect little diamond and fits 4 little diamonds perfectly in it with one equipped. So you have 5. Like if they make a 6th, what does that change that shape to? And then it's just super annoying to program because then there's a blank spot and then everyone's mind goes, well, there's a blank spot. We got to have another one to fill the blank spot. So yeah, I'm kind of leery of a new subclass coming. I think 5 is it. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, we'll see. But this last little bit was kind of cool, and I did not know this. So I said my last linchpin in this theory is that in game you can destroy a Nova Bomb with a Strand grapple.
Get the hell out of here!
I was not aware of this either.
Oh, you know what's going to happen now. We're about to go do some testing.
Yeah, they say, and at the same time, a Titan and Hunter's solar melees, a hammer and a knife, will deflect each other.
Get the hell out of here. Who the hell was able to... I want to know the timing on... Okay, hold on a second. Can we just like drop this whole debate for a second and pick up a new debate of who the hell deflected a hammer with a knife? And Jesus, like that's super cool. Okay, pick debate back up.
Yeah. So, and then they end off. Anyway, love the podcast. Also, Ztories has a 69 reload.
Hot. Sorry. Hot.
But no, so the main theory here seems to be that, the subclasses we've seen so far have these kind of direct relations to each other. Arc and Stasis being the like go fast, go slow.
Yep.
Void and Strand is a little more abstract.
Yeah.
Void I usually think of more as like gravitational, and I guess Strand allows you to move freely. But I think maybe they're basing that off of the in-game mechanic of that, a grapple will kill a Nova Bomb.
I've got okay, do they mean like a grapple melee? Or like
I don't know.
Or just grappling a Nova Bomb will kill it. We've got to test that.
One way to find out. We're
going to test that. We're going to figure out what that actually means.
And then the fact that a Titan and Hunter both solar will cancel each other out. So they're thinking, solar is its own
duality.
opposite.
Yeah, no, I got
now,
you.
I like the idea of perhaps solar is its own duality. It encompasses both that healing and the
fusion
damaging
and
side.
fission. The fusion of 2 particles coming together and fission of the breakdown of 2 particles.
Yeah. Now the one thing that I think I want to I'm not trying to poke a hole or anything in the theory here.
Oh, we will poke holes. This will happen.
Void and Strand, I don't necessarily think are opposites if you're purely basing it off of the interaction between a Strand Grapple and a Nova Bomb. Because, speaking from experience, a lot of shit kills a Nova Bomb. A golden gun kills a Nova Bomb. A Needle Storm kills a Nova Bomb, which I guess is Strand. A Thunder Crash can kill a Nova Bomb.
If I shoot it enough with a sniper, I can kill a Nova Bomb.
Yeah, so needless to say, unfortunately, a lot of things kill a Nova. So I don't know that that necessarily means that Void and Strand are opposites. But I do like the idea for sure of solar kind of being its all-encompassing thing.
Yeah. I'm going off the idea of like fusion and fission. Like,
I
get that. That to me would be the key, splitting of atom or combining of two molecules to create a new atom. Like I could see it either way, but I'm gonna err. Well, I don't want to say err on the side of caution. I'm gonna say that it could be, its own thing. Like I said, I just going off of pure visuals of like the Guardian subclass screen and saying, well, this perfect node creates 4 perfect spaces with 1 equip. There's 5. Like that's it. Like, yeah, that's I think from a programming standpoint, I don't think that, like, unless they create it as like a square of them, but I don't think that's happening.
I never know. They could change it up.
They could. Could be a circle. Could be a giant triangle.
Oh
shit! Triangles and circles. I done ate my own words there.
There you go. But yeah, so that's it for our shoutouts for this episode. I say if you liked what you heard and you want to give us some support, you can leave a review on your platform of choice. Just a couple stars. Always helps us out. If you feel strongly enough and you want to leave a text review, we really enjoy looking at those as well and reading through them. Or you can reach out to us on Twitter at Myths and Stories, Z instead of an S, and you may see yourself as a future shout out.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Let me give a thank you then. I'm going to thank the dinosaurs for deciding to eat their neighbor. But at least bickering over it. All right. Anything else, Smith?
No, that's it.
All righty. Well, then from all of us lore daddies to all of you guardians out there, we'll see you next time.